Welcome to episode 2 of A Creative Excuse, presented by Echo Amano. We're opening our brand new gallery, March 29th, 830 Canyon Road, 6 to 9 p.m. There's gonna be cake. Hope you can join us. I don't know why I keep saying us and we. It's just me. I guess you're a part of it, so you and me, we're opening a gallery. This episode is Jared Weiss. He is a painter here in Santa Fe. Jared and I have worked together on an exhibition before. We've known each other for a few years. This is a fun episode to do. We get deep in psychological and talk about Freud and all of that. Jared's got an exhibition coming up with Owen Mark Lorien called The Ratio of People to Cake. So we'll see if we can meet some kind of really nice ratio of people to cake at my opening, but I'm sure that they'll probably have cake at their opening as well. So that is opening April 12th, 5 to 7 at Ellsworth Gallery. You can see Jared's work at jaredweissart.com, jaredweissart.com. Make sure to subscribe and rate and review this podcast. And thanks for listening. So, great, we're recording.
Here we go.
Hello.
Oh wait, did you already do the introduction?
No, I'm gonna do a pre-recorded intro.
Oh, I see. I got you. Cool.
So
here we go.
That's how I'll start it, and then it'll just lead into this conversation that we're having right now.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, and we've got two doggies in the background. We've got, what are their names?
Got Beckett and Franny.
Beckett and Franny.
Two new additions to the world.
Yeah.
He's 5 months old and she's 6 months old.
So that'll provide some entertainment throughout this.
Perfect timing there, guys.
Yeah, so we've done this a number of times.
Yeah.
Just talk about art.
We've been on the radio and stuff too.
We were on the radio together. That's right. And the studio visit things. That's one thing. Like when I talk to young artists, like I think you're somebody that I mention as an example of like how to get feedback. Right? Like, I think you're somebody that's going out there a lot and saying, hey, come over and do a studio visit. Like, not many artists actually have invited me over just like, no strings attached, just come over, let's talk about the work.
Really?
Yeah, totally. And I think that that's such a huge just aspect of getting the feedback, but also just like meeting people and making the connections with people. I think that's awesome that you do that.
I mean, I think the work is very social. Like how I start working is by I throw a big party, pretty much.
Right.
And my girlfriend and I make a bunch of food. We have, and we have people bring over things too, but then get everybody well fed and start have a couple drinks and then photo reference for paintings, right? So there, it starts with a bunch of people in the studio. That's where it's at. And I don't know. I think that art is inherently social. I don't think that if you make something, it's art until you show it to somebody. So it has to get out there. My little dog wants to go outside. Should we?
Yeah, we can edit any pauses. So if you want to take care of that
real quick.
Totally.
You little. Hey, come on. Better be for real, Mr. Man. Did you ever listen to that the radio thing that we did? Did you ever?
I'm sure I did.
Yeah, I hate the sound of my own voice.
That's something that I'm have to get used to here. I mean, in editing these things, it's like, it's weird.
Yeah, it's really weird. You don't sound like what you think you sound like.
Right. I know. So you're talking about the social aspect. You said that you don't think it's art until you show it.
No, I don't.
And well, I think that the social aspect of it, like a lot of times, unless you're, I don't know, going a little deep, there aren't a lot of opportunities to get social with art. Like, I mean, there's openings, right? But then you don't really engage a lot with the art at openings. I mean, in my experience, it's more just, I mean, you engage with people, and it's fun. You don't really go very deep, but you're not really engaging so much with the art. And then a lot of times with like artist talks, that can feel kind of one-sided.
Oh, definitely.
You know?
It is social, but it's always a slightly removed. Like I like to say that all of my best friends are dead. You know, like you can go to a museum and like, you know, I love like French post-impressionist stuff, right? Like, you know, and you still have this social relationship with somebody who's not here anymore, right? And it's like, oh, it's so nice to see, nice to see you again. There you are. Mm-hmm. But definitely removed there. Obviously, that's an extreme example, but the act of seeing art is somebody producing a record of something that happened. Everything's performance in that sense, right? Mm-hmm. You've performed it, like in my case, in front of a canvas. Whatever has happened is a built-up record, and then you're using that material to try to communicate something,
right?
Whatever that might be, but it always has to be like this, somebody coming back to to witness the event through the material thing, right? And that I would say is social, but it's not like social, like here we are talking to each other, something like this, right?
There's a dialogue, like I think about in physics where they talk about the collapsing of a wave into a particle that happens when you observe the wave, and how in like a certain sense, like it doesn't become real until it's observed.
I teach and I talk about this a lot with my students, and I had some very good arguments where one student brought up and he was saying, like, World War II, many artworks were destroyed. Like, Hitler destroyed all these artworks. Are they still art now? And I kind of unfortunately don't think that they are, right? Because you can't experience them anymore. There's maybe you could experience it through a documentation of it, but it's not the real thing. And painting is especially so different after it's been photographed.
It's kind of cliche, but it's so true. I mean, I'm remarking all the time, like, man, I saw it on paper,
right?
But it is not the same.
No, totally different. Very like real physical thing in front of you. It's this buildup of all, an accumulation of time and events that have happened.
Yeah.
And
have you ever gone to see the Mona Lisa?
I have.
That is such a weird, like it's not the painting. Like,
no, it's not.
It's almost like the painting's not there.
Yep.
It's just this immense spectacle.
Totally.
It's crazy.
It became famous because they used it as an advertisement for the Louvre in the 20s or something.
Is that right?
Like that. I mean, it was still a famous painting, but it wasn't like the most famous painting. And then but I went to Paris with my family there. I don't know, they don't look at art that much, right? And like my sister made a beeline for the Mona Lisa, and then she's like, I'm out. What? That's all I need to see, you know? And it's just like, yes, I've seen the thing that I've seen 1,000 times before, and I can go. I've experienced it.
Right. And the Mona Lisa now, in my it's not just a painting. It's like it's the spectacle, it's all the people, it's the cell phones up in the air, it's the crowds of like frantic people. Right. It's like that's my image of the Mona Lisa.
Right. Oh, absolutely. It's like an amusement park. I mean, the Louvre itself is so packed all the time. It's great, but
you can get into some quiet zones. There's some galleries that like nobody really goes to.
Yeah. I went there. I was in the summertime, so it's probably.
Right.
Yeah. So tell me about this project.
Yeah.
A little bit more.
The podcast.
Yeah, that you're working on.
So, it's a social thing for me. Like, well, if I back up a little bit, when I was working at Form and Concept, so much of my time was spent in administration, and I was spending a lot of time in front of the computer and not much time interacting with artists and clients and just having that the human to human interaction
Right.
without the medium of a computer. And so there's that. And I'm finding like sometimes it helps for me to like create this conceit for my mind, like an excuse that like, oh, it's a practical thing. I'm making a
Right.
podcast. So
Right.
it's like, oh, hey, let's get together and sit down and have a conversation about creativity and see where it goes. And
Right.
you know, I guess, I mean, there's no reason why I can't say to anybody, hey, let's go hang out and have coffee. I don't know. There's something about it that makes it easier for my mind to accept. Like,
Well, I think that I mean, I'm guilty of this, like, especially with the creative process, it kind of ties in, but like, I feel like I have to constantly be doing something.
yeah.
Right. And I have to be doing something where I'm constructing something that I can show to other people. Right.
Mhm.
And I mean, I don't get the sense that your project is like this, but my project in the studio is like this frantic, like I have to get something done. If I don't get something done, I'm a wreck, you know. I'm just like, I feel this like blank, meaningless feeling like in my forehead, and it's just like,
I totally relate to that.
it's just like, oh, I haven't done anything today. What's wrong with me? You know, there goes this day that I could have produced something.
Right.
It's a very American thing, I would say. Like they've kind of, especially our generation, they've programmed us to be producers.
Make less and do more.
Yeah.
Make less money, I mean.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to be happy if you produce something worthwhile. And I believe that absolutely, but we kind of take it to a definite extreme.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's telling that here I am like launching my own business and I'm like, while I'm at it, why don't I start a podcast too?
Yeah.
And then the other night I was talking to Kara, I was like, we should bring more contemporary dance to Santa Fe. I'm like, what? Just stop, dude.
Yeah.
You know, like
But
I
I mean-
can take it one at a time.
Yeah. I think it's great though, you know. Because it's about generating meaning in your life and with the people around you, right? I think meaning is social as well. Like you feel like there's, like with art, it doesn't have meaning until it's social. Same thing, like just like things like this is like it doesn't have a reality if it's not shared with somebody else, right?
Yeah. This is, that's definitely a part of it. I mean, so, going back to the gallery thing, not getting that as much social interaction. And also I'm recognizing as like a presenter of art, I tend to like hide behind what I'm presenting sometimes. I mean, like
definitely.
like what I'm putting out there is certainly indicative of like who I am and what I'm interested in and my personality to some degree, but I think making artwork and presenting it is a way more vulnerable proposition than, I'm, presenting an art show,
Yeah.
And so I've also recognized that there's a part of me that wants to kind of there's a part of me that's shy,
Totally.
and so also this podcast is a way where I'm like pushing on that a little bit more, where it's like, okay, my voice is being heard,
Right.
even though like, hopefully this is more about the person I'm talking to than me. It's still like my voice is getting out there. And so that's a little bit more vulnerable.
I mean, yeah, I think that's like I was saying about the removed quality of an artwork where it's the record of an event. It's also sort of a buffer, like where if I give an artist talk, I'm incredibly nervous. I hate having like all eyes on me rather than that. Like I'm much more comfortable having something in between where it's like, look at this object that I've created, that I constructed in my studio by myself, that nobody had, nobody watched me construct. And then rather than all eyes on me, you get the removed experience of, whatever I'm trying to do with the painting project, right? And it's similar with the podcast, right? You're like kind of getting to edit things to where you get to say exactly what you want to say, maybe, right?
I don't think I'm going to do a whole lot of editing on this.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you think of like a different way to have a participatory event with people that's not an artist talk? Like, is there another way to do that? where you get to talk about what you do, but other people get to chime in and have their own experience? Is there a better way to do that?
Hold on, my dog's eating paint. Beckett, don't eat paint. Come here. You goofball. I mean, I guess the party thing is like that, right?
Right.
Where I'm creating work, but it's still this other. It's not. It's about getting photo reference for paintings, but it's not like that's sort of secondary. Like the first thing is like, let's throw a party. I think throwing, having everybody up. We haven't done it for a long time. We should have another party soon. I've been thinking about how we live in the Southwest. I've been thinking about like Old West gunfights as new subject matter. So just as a little bit of context, I do you want to talk about that a little bit? Like so you're very interested in the Freud's idea of the screen memory, right? Right.
Do you want to share what that is?
Why are you eating paint? Hey! Don't eat paint, dude. Come here. There we go.
Okay.
Sorry.
She'll be developing some screen memory soon.
God. So the work has this very an idea. I've latched onto this idea for a couple of years. Screen memory. It's an early Freudian idea. He sketches and then kind of abandons, and other people take up and run with it. But our memories are malleable, right? We can, when we remember something, we're effectively bringing it back and viewing it again, and then putting it away, like storing it, but it's rewritten in the process. Every time you bring it up, it's kind of corrupted a little bit.
Like when you save a JPEG over and over.
Save a JPEG, yeah. Our memory is just very similar. But the screen memory is an event that happens to you that's too intense to assimilate into your, like you can't live with it, right? Something that you can't live with or you can't understand. And as a defense mechanism, you take different memories that are similar but much more palatable and rewrite the too intense memory. So you effectively remember something incorrectly and put other images together, collaging your memories, like reconstructing them so that you, in a way that didn't happen, so that you can continue to function. And that's how I see my work, is this kind of screen where I use collage as in terms of photo reference, take people that I photograph in the studio and put them in places that they were not, and it creates this kind of slightly uncanny little happening.
Yeah.
Usually they're doing something that's not easily accessible, right?
You've been exploring this for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing that I've, just noted, like, wow, you're really exploring the material. You said 2 years?
No, since 4 years now.
4 years now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been, I mean, it's like it's a big way of looking at things, right? It's a very large, like memory, huge, right? Painting is so oriented around memory anyways, right? Or this accumulation of events that, accumulation of marks, right? That acts as a holder of some event, right? But it's, that's kind of the big idea. And I'll get smaller ideas that I'll work with, and those kind of morph over time. I was thinking about football for a while. I still kind of am. This painting behind us is kind of a football painting. You were at the football party.
Yep.
That was a while ago. When was it?
It was a long time ago.
That was over a year ago. That was the last party we threw.
Oh, wow.
I got so much good material from that party that I haven't had to throw another one.
Right.
But football is this very violent thing. American football, not European football. And it's a way of sublimating that violence, right? Taking something that is too intense and using it for some other means, right? I grew up in the Midwest. It was like prerequisite that you liked football and I played football. I was very bad at it, and I thought that I had to because it was, part of where I was from, this tiny little town. and, stopped caring about it when I was a teenager. And then I was working at a restaurant in a bar that had football on TV, and I started watching. It's like mesmerizing. You're just like, oh man, it's so easy to fall into it because it's such a spectacle. You're just like sucked into it. And I got really sucked into it just as a like visual phenomenon. And I started thinking about the protests, the kneeling, and kind of what that represented as a culture. So a lot of the times, I think of the figures in my work as actors on a stage. They're performing some role that I'm kind of directing, and it is very theatrical. Some of the earlier works are very like theatrical lighting. It looks like they're literally on a stage, things like this. But then I was thinking about the parallels between players and actors sort of, do some otherworldly thing that, we think of them as, we elevate them as very superhuman figures, right? Oh, you're an actor. This is like one of the highest things you can become in our culture, right? And like that, players also kind of embody this sense of like superhuman ability. And we look at them as these kind of idealized characters. And what I was thinking about was with the kneeling, there's a sort of stop in the fantasy and the ability to watch something and feel like catharsis from, other violence through the screen, right? And you, when somebody kneels, they say like, I'm a real person with, I'm bringing attention to real human issues, right? Humanitarian issues. And like the average football watcher is like, where's my spectacle? Where did you're stopping the spectacle?
Do your job,
right?
Yeah.
And so I like that as in the same way as an actor, like breaking the fourth wall thing, right? Like an actor stepping out of character and being themselves. That's where. So this is kind of like this smaller within the idea of screen memory. I have these other ideas that I've kind of have common threads. They're very similar in like shape, I would say. Like they take a similar form.
Yeah, I definitely see that, within actors or whatever, they get to sort of portray the ideals that we have or the fears that we have on screen. But it's funny, like just comparing it to football, like people are actually like getting hurt and hitting each other on the field, and they're still embodying that, that ideal of like of the body or the athlete or like hard work. And then, the actor is not that it doesn't take hard work to do what they do, but it's pretend, right?
Right.
So that's interesting.
Yeah. On like a different side of things, like take a method actor who like attempts to literally embody the role, right? I just saw that movie Weiss where Christian Bale plays Dick Cheney.
Oh, I didn't see it.
And he's one of those, extreme actors. He gained like so much weight to play Dick Cheney. And, that could be very physically taxing on your, on your body, whatever. But
right.
I think I'm a big fan of The Sopranos, right? You ever watch The Sopranos?
I haven't, no.
So James Gandolfini said that he plays this mob boss, right? I think it's the best TV show of all time. And he said that like the effects of like having to continually get into this like incredibly stressed headspace, like, he died really young. And he was saying like before he died that like, this is, so taxing. This is so hard to get into this role, right? Yeah. But I feel like I have to do it because it's, it's real that way. So in a similar way, right? Not literally physical, like football is, but definitely mentally exhausting. Right?
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, I can't, for somebody who's, playing a psychopath or something,
right.
to literally embody that character, I would imagine that there's some kind of, residue.
Yeah.
Right. When, you take off the character and go about your business. I mean, I'm sure you have to psych yourself up to get into it.
Right.
What does it take to get yourself out?
Right. Yeah, definitely. And so, like with my characters, I'm thinking of them as players, but like actors on a stage, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're also like, if I were to have a dream and you showed up in the dream, it's a construction that I'm making of my past experiences with you, right? Who I think you are. I don't really think there's any way for me to get at who you really are. I don't even know if we can get at that ourselves, right? Think about who you know. Somebody who says, "Oh, I know who I really am." I don't believe you, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's so dense. There's so much in the unconscious. But so my characters in my paintings are like that sort of construction at a kind of disadvantage, right? Where like I can't really know somebody. I can know like a little bit, but so there are lenses where I'm looking at them as one, the real physical person who I'm painting, right? But through an image, a photograph. Two, as an actor playing some kind of role that I'm designating, and then like the unknowability of other people, maybe, right? So they're embodying all those things for me, but it's all pieces, right? Some kind of sideways kind of glances at things, at personalities, things like this. And then they if I had like I said, if I have a dream and you're in it, it's probably going to reflect something about me as well, like the part that is like Frank of me showing up in the dream. Dogs keep going up and down the stairs. That's that little pitter patter,
tippy taps.
Good.
Do you find that the work is like therapeutic for you in some way?
I use the work to navigate my experience of the world, like how I use it to process and construct meaning of like what I think that I'm experiencing, however nebulous that might sound, but so it is in some ways it has to be therapeutic, because I feel like this impulse that I have to make work like all the time. I'm always filling my empty space in the studio, so there's this compulsion to like see what's happening in my. I think of the work as a mirror of your unconscious, right? If it's good, it will show what's happening in your unconscious, right? So I'm trying to see what's happening there, but it's not like it means that it's something that's nice.
Oh
right?
yeah, for sure. I guess like I think it's really tempting to think like, okay, because you're working with ideas that Freud put out in psychoanalysis, like is this psychoanalysis for you? Like, do you have is it a personal thing where you're working with your own screen memories?
I think of it as sublimation. It's like it's just the best material for me to make work from. And there's this sense that, scientists think that when you bring up a memory, you're basically replaying it as if it were happening again, and part of your mind thinks that it's happening again. And so with a screen memory, this thing that you've blocked off, you blocked it off for a reason, for psychological survival, right? So to try to get back at that and see that again is like it's brand new and it's living, right? And it is as intense as it was the very first time. So it's really probably like a bad idea, the whole project, right? To like see this, to go in there and see these things that you've attempted or successfully hidden from yourself. But it is, for some reason, I have this like compulsion to still try to see it, But that's like the whole idea behind psychoanalysis, right? Is to heal from those experiences by putting them into, I don't know, a more acceptable context, or changing your story around it. Right. Coming at like the perspective that you have now rather than the perspective you had at that time. Maybe you're more able to cope or something like this.
And maybe even like coming to construct an entirely new story around it.
Right.
You know, I mean, I think that our imaginations are really powerful that way, and in that, you know, we can create a new story around an experience,
Right.
and that becomes a reality. You
Yep,
know,
totally.
It's like I'm going to choose to think about this, why this happened, or what happened here in a different way. You know, that's less painful. So in a certain way, that's almost maybe a similar sort of mechanism.
Right.
Maybe.
Right. We talked about this idea before. I'll repeat it for the podcast, but the Lacan's idea of we're walking around in the world, we're putting words on everything around us, we're describing it, saying, you know, and you do this so you can say, oh, I know that I'm safe. I know that I'm in my house, sitting at a desk. There's nothing that categorically I haven't experienced before, quote unquote, right? Everything you've never really experienced, but you know, you trick yourself into thinking that, oh, because I can define it with words, I know it, and I know that it's safe. Really, like, nothing is safe. Everything has this, what Lacan calls the real, where it's like everything has this amorphous, like otherworldly, totally unexpected, totally dynamic characteristic. But you try to tell yourself that you have a definition and things are going to be expected, right? I think of painting in a very similar way, where it's like I'm plugging holes. I feel like, oh, I've attempted to see something, so I've attempted to define it, and if I can define it, then it's, you know, I have control over it. But it's really not ever like that.
Yeah.
Right. You just have to. I mean, you have to tell yourself that just to walk out the front door every day, right? Like, you trick yourself into thinking that you're safe at all times, just to continue, you know, moving forward, living your life, right?
The sun's going to come up.
Right.
I'm going to wake up.
Yep.
I'm going to get in my car and go to work.
Yeah.
You know, when I got fired, it was one of those things that was like a real, you know, it illuminates the fact that I don't know
Right.
what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
And I never did. You know, it's like going to work and getting a paycheck.
Right.
It's like, oh yeah, I can count on that. I'm going to go to work and get my paycheck.
Yeah.
And that's really, that it creates that illusion of continuity, or that illusion of certainty. Right. That I know it's going to happen. And so an experience like that, losing your job or something, it's not new.
No.
Really.
Right.
It's just really illuminating the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
Is that you don't know.
Yeah. It's tripping on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Like the crack that you didn't see. It was there the whole time. And you're just like,
I heard somebody talk about one of his methods of meditation was to just sit in front of a tree and just like forget about anything that you think of as a treeness, or calling it a tree, or thinking about its branches, but just like sitting and appreciating the thing that's in front of you.
Yeah. I mean, that's ultimately to try to see something that's buried in your unconscious is a very similar thing. Because the thing that's too intense to process is the thing that you can't define. So it's when something's come into your experience that you couldn't put it into words, right? It was too other for your experience, that it was not able to be wrapped up in a nice, neat little package. So what's unconscious is nonverbal, right? It has this very dynamic, big, not seeing something in a definition, not seeing something through a definition, right? Experiencing something directly without the buffer of words, right?
Do you think that's something we can do? Is that possible?
Oh yeah, definitely. But it's like where you're, you know, moments of like psychosis or, you know, whatever other. There are means to get there for sure, right? There are people, there are religions that practice to get to that, to experience the world directly, but it's incredibly destabilizing, I would say. I've had experiences where I feel like I've got like pushed into that place through stress or other things that, you know, all of a sudden you can't tell yourself the story of what's happening to you anymore, and words stop sticking, and you're just like, all of a sudden everything's brand new and everything's incredible, but at the same time everything's absolutely terrifying because you don't know who you are, where you are, what's, you know, there's no link,
right?
There's no verbal link that
says.
Says.
For me, I have a practice, and that is a big part of it, is kind of putting myself more and more into a position of being comfortable with the reality that I don't know.
Yeah.
And words are certainly helpful, and I've got to use them. I'm in this body, right? And we're living in this world.
Right.
So being able to simultaneously like live in the world of definitions, but like also learn how to live in the unconscious, I guess, or in the unknown.
Right.
Is something I practice.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, you have to. Go back to psychoanalytic kind of perspectives, you have to use language to be social, right? You have to attempt to use these words that we have all agreed on, what means what, so that we can attempt to overlap with each other, to share experiences somehow. But then I also think, like, psychoanalytically, there is at the core this thing that is unshareable, right? Everybody could experience, but nobody could talk about it, or something like this, right?
Well, we all experience things differently.
Yeah.
I mean, even if we use the same words to describe what we just experienced, like your whole history, the context in which you live your life, I'm 99% sure you experienced that in a whole different way than
absolutely.
I did.
Yeah. Because it's the lens of everything that's happened to you before. That's how you see that through, right? You can't.
Unless you're in direct experience.
Maybe. Unless
you're in that state.
Yeah. So do you want to talk a little bit about like the working process or anything like this?
I'd love to. Yeah. Okay, so you have these parties, these social events.
Wild parties.
Wild parties. They get pretty silly.
Yeah.
You take photographs, reference material for other things. So you're in certain ways acting like a director, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, like, what do you do when you have people here? How do you set that up?
I usually have, like I said, I have an idea that I'm working with. So the one that you were at, I had a bunch of references from football, from like its earliest days to contemporary, and I had them. I was like, here, recreate this pose. Try to act. We're friends coming over. They're not like dressed like football players or anything like this. They're dressed just like they normally would be. They're playing themselves, like acting as themselves. It's kind of another tier of this idea, but like at a party, you are performing as a character that you want people to experience you as. So you are already an actor whenever you're social, right? Any kind of social interaction, you're telling a story that you want other people to believe, right?
Have you ever telling that story? Do you ever have anybody go, "I'm not an actor"?
No.
Okay, go ahead. Go on.
Probably, though. I'm sure it'll happen. In the future, I'm sure. And so they have these reference photos. They're recreating poses, things like this. Sometimes people get really literal with it, and they'll hold the same pose forever. Usually when it gets interesting is kind of the in-between, like the thing that you don't plan for. Those are the reference images that I think I find myself working with, because even like I don't know what's happening when I go back and look at them. There's some other thing that's happened that wasn't planned for, that adds this, dynamism to it that is interesting to me, because I ultimately I want the work to stay unconscious until after it's finished. If I know why I'm doing something, then it's kind of, there's no reason to do it. I'm just kind of copying the idea at that point. If I'm enacting some other unknown thing while I'm painting, then that's when it's interesting. So I have that probably, tens of thousands of images now that I have archived that I can pull from. Each event is like, we'll start a new body of work, but then I can go back in the archive and pull out other, older ideas, things like this. And then I make a collage on the computer, like I said, pulling other spaces, taking people out, adding people that weren't in the same space together, putting them together in a collage format. And I print that out, and that's my reference. I look at that and I, paint from that. I don't literally like put any kind of photographic material on the canvas or anything like that. It's just, very traditional oil on canvas. But this is my reference, and it's a snapshot. And it should be bad. it should be like incomplete in a way that like, if I have like a beautiful photograph and it has all this information in it, like I'm just copying it. If it's bad, then I have to like create something new
You get to
from
fill
that.
in the blanks.
I fill in the blanks. And if it, if I've done my job well, I fill in the blanks in an interesting way, and something happens in the work that again wasn't expected from, each point should have like an unexpected, this real Lacanian real event happening that you didn't plan for. If you plan for everything, it's just so boring, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, just going through the motions.
Well, there's artists out there that I would assume there's artists out there that say, okay, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And I'm going to execute it.
Right.
And the success of the piece will be on how well I executed it.
Right.
Which is interesting to me because again, going back to the I don't know, like, I mean, there's got to be, how successful can you be?
Oh, it's so stressful to think like that.
I don't know. Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
do it either.
Yeah.
I try to sometimes, and then I realize, I don't like that.
Actually, that's a very good. I just went to San Francisco, took a little trip. I went to grad school in San Francisco. And when I was there, SF MoMA was closed because they were doing a huge new renovation. And so I just went and got to see it for the first time. And I saw this Via Selman show. Do you know her work?
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen works of hers before. She's a photorealist, like to the extreme. Fantastic work, beautiful work. But it was this huge show of hers. And I had a like legitimate panic attack where I was just like, I couldn't handle it because there was so much work. And she's so detail oriented where she's like, I'm going to copy this thing as much as I can. Paintings of stars, paintings of waves, paintings of just like the ground with rocks and things like this. Like, and they're perfect. Like, she has these other pieces that are, it's like those old school kind of slates that you would have as, and your chalkboard that you're writing on, they're little tiny, probably like a foot tall, something like that. She'd have the original slate, and then she would cast it, I think in bronze, and then paint it so it exactly matches the original. And then she has like 50 of them in a case, and you can't tell the difference between one or the other. Or like she'll go for a walk and get a rock, pick it up. Oh, I like this rock. Cast it in bronze, paint it exactly like the original. You can't tell which one's real, which one's fake.
Is she coming from like the idea of the simulacra or whatever, the copy of the copy of the copy?
Probably. I would, that's kind of the time period that would,
Yeah.
It would definitely make sense. But
Is that kind of work satisfying to you?
No, it's really stressful.
Yeah.
It's really stressful. Like I was like having like palpitations and like had to leave because it was so. I saw it last in the museum. It's a huge museum, so it's kind of like fatigued. And then, because when I see work, I think, how do you make it? And I put myself in the mindset of like, how could I make this? Or if you see, I do that for everything. Like, oh, I see some food recipe in a restaurant. How do I make that? It's always like, I'm always thinking about how do I recreate if I want to experience something. And I'm thinking like, how do I make this? And I can't get out of that. And it's just like, oh my God, it's just such intense focus all the time. And just like, for me, it's incredibly stressful. But like I've seen, she has an Art 21 PBS documentary, and she's just like, happily painting
Seems
away.
relaxed.
She's totally relaxed by it.
That's great.
People, I had a student that was like that last semester, and she was painting like the fur of like, I think it was a horse's fur really up close and really detailed. And she's like, yeah, it's just incredibly calming. Like, this is just, I get into it and I do it, and it's really nice for me. And like the way that I'm thinking about it is just like this controlling things. Everything is just so, and trying to like, for me, it's a forced, it would be like very forced to try to get into that kind of recreation. And so, good for them.
Yeah, no, it's totally amazing to see that skill in action.
Yeah.
I think as I get older, like I've noticed that, I thought like that's how I had to be, is to be more controlling.
Right.
And as I get older, I'm just finding it's just not satisfying.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to let go of that more and more and more, and really just get into whatever is presenting itself.
Right.
And of course responding to it, and also, becoming more comfortable with being, knowing that my actions and what I do has an effect on that thing.
Right.
But which is different than like, I'm going to really try to, control this experience.
Yeah. Because it usually doesn't, for me, if I try to control everything, it doesn't go well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like tense and forced, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, there's no like living quality to it. It's like this against living quality somehow.
Right.
You know? You just gotta, you know, let things happen.
Right.
Let them show up.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And that's when things are real.
Yeah.
Usually, for me at least. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I agree, and I think part of that is looking at the relationships of things, right? You know, I think, you know, so much of what I've, you know, been doing in the past, you know, 3 years or something has been like pulling back in a way,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and this new project for me, not just the podcast, but the gallery, is like putting myself into the world more.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I needed that time to kind of just really get quiet and get to know what it is that was important to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just finding like, oh, okay, like, you know, even just like the gallery on a financial level, it does not happen without other people.
Right.
Like I could put the best shit in the world on the walls, and if
Yeah.
nobody comes in there, I'm out of business.
Right.
You know what I
Oh, yeah,
mean?
definitely.
So that's kind of stressful.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's no matter how good the thing is, it's a huge risk.
Right.
You know?
Are you traveling a lot?
I'm going to Oaxaca next week.
Yeah.
But aside from that, no. Once I get in there, I'm there.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just me, which I'm excited about because it, you know, again going back to F&C's form of concept, F&C, you know, there was a whole staff there,
Right.
and we had an ambitious program, and it was a lot to manage. But here, it's like 600 square feet.
Yeah.
Everybody that comes into the door is going to talk to me.
Right.
Every artist is going to talk to me.
Yep.
And I could come at that with an even greater level of control, right? There's that temptation.
Right.
And yet it's funny because I feel like that's illuminating for me the desire to keep that in check,
Yeah.
to balance that out, and make it more about the connections with people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm really trying to take advantage of that.
Great. How many artists are you working with so far?
So on the jewelry side, so I'm doing jewelry, ceramics, and printmaking.
Mm-hmm.
On the jewelry side, I've got 6. On the ceramic side, there's 2 local folks, and then the Oaxacan collective. So there's a bunch of people that work on that.
Oh, cool.
But it's organized by this group called Colectivo 1050 in Oaxaca City. And so they work with 7 or 8, maybe more, different indigenous villages around
Cool.
Oaxaca City.
Oh, great.
And then on the printmaking side, I've got a bunch of historical Mexican work. And then I'm talking to some local printmakers and coming at it more from less from the idea of a representation type arrangement. I'm really interested in shifting or just not following the model because that's the model of how galleries work.
Great.
So I'm not really coming into it with this idea as like, I'm going to represent these artists, but more just like a childlike sense of like, this is cool. Look at this.
Mhm.
Like, I think this is great. I'm going to put it up,
Right.
you know?
I mean, yeah, I think that the gallery system as it is not, it's kind of slowly dying.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
it has that forced quality about it, right? Where it's like, you know, I am the gallery is the person who designates what is tasteful and what is not, right? I am an authority figure. I get to say, right? And it's less, I mean, I don't know. Obviously it's great to have work in a space shown and people come see it. That's the point of a gallery, but it's less, like people are going to galleries less now, right? They're taking less time because it's available online, things like this. So it's harder to have that like kind of dictatorship sensibility, right?
Yeah.
People just don't believe it anymore,
Mm-hmm.
right? So having much more of an open communal sense about it, I think that makes sense.
Totally. Right. And I want it to be accessible. Like I
Yeah.
want people to come in and feel comfortable.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, from the standpoint of the work, from the standpoint of the price, like this, I'm a part of this,
Right,
you know, rather than it being an exclusive thing.
right.
Only rich people can come here.
Yeah, yeah,
Or only people who have taste.
right.
Like if you know, whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and I think having, you see more and more galleries doing different kinds of events.
Right.
I think that's important to just bring people in the door.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I mean, certainly getting away from exclusivity, certainly like from a certain way pulling art off a pedestal,
Mm-hmm.
like just reminding people this is just life.
Mm-hmm.
Like art is just a natural thing that
Yeah.
humans do.
Right.
It's not something that you have to be like some kind of like God to
Right.
make,
Yeah. Yeah. Although I do think it takes a lot of time.
It does.
Yeah, a lot of time. Absolutely. But anybody can, if they dedicate that amount of time,
Mm-hmm.
I'd say 10 years. That's what Malcolm Gladwell says, at least.
But even just from a standpoint of like making something, even if you're not showing it to people, I know
Yeah.
for you that you were saying that's not art, but like I think just having something where like, oh, I sketch for an hour a day,
Yep.
and I don't need to show it to anybody, but it's something. I think it can be something really helpful,
Right.
to
Absolutely.
to just do that,
Yeah.
even if it's not good.
Yeah, you're just evaluating your experience. You're investigating your experience,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Trying to put a reflective lens on yourself. That's what art does.
Yeah. Right.
Looking at experience. Where does it overlap? Where is it, similar? If you can say that it's similar to other people's experience, there has to be an overlap, right? Because if there wasn't, somebody wouldn't be interested in, like, say what I'm doing. I want my work to have this sense of familiarity, where, like, the people that I'm painting are people that I know, but I paint them in a way that I would hope that people, like anybody, could go up to it and be like, I feel like I might know that person, right? There's like this sense that they're not universal, but they're like, if you watch a great movie, it's got Brad Pitt in it, you don't think like, I don't know, you think the character, I like that character has some similar experience. I feel, I can project myself into it and see myself as Brad Pitt,
Mm-hmm.
right? Oh, I'm like Brad Pitt. I'm like that character, right? So yeah, I want my work just to be filled with Brad Pitts. That's all I'm trying to say.
Uh-oh.
No, that's not true.
Can you think, this is a question I think will be a sort of through line through the podcast. Can you think of a piece of art, an art experience, a class, or something that really shifted, either was like a powerful experience or shifted the way you thought about art or put you in a different direction, whether it's a single piece of art or maybe it was an exhibition, or for Lauren, it was a class. It was an art history class.
Uh-huh. Specific in, like, just in general art history class, or?
Yeah, it was. So for her, she took a medieval art history class, and that she became a medieval art history major.
Oh, cool.
She eventually turned into more contemporary, but for a while, that's like she was really enthralled by that.
I love medieval paintings. I'll get back to your question in just a second. I love, like, I'm not religious, but seeing a medieval painting, people who are incredibly religious, that you can just see how much they care about showing what it is that they want to convey. And they're, the fact that they're often tiny, and they're using these tiny little brushes, and they're putting just so much of themselves into that work. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a painting, it's a Byzantine head of Christ at the Met in New York. That's kind of the first thing that comes to mind. It's just like perfect, everything. There's these tiny little Byzantine striations on it, and they're just like these, such a small brush, and every single one is perfect. And it's just like, you can tell that this person believed wholeheartedly in what they're, in this project that is making this work.
Yeah, it's beautiful stuff. I love how flat everything becomes.
Yeah.
And it's very surreal in that way.
It's very unconscious though too, because it's like you think of modernism, huge paintings, right? They're very body oriented, where they push you in space. You have to get back from them physically to be able to see them. Where like a medieval picture is like tiny. You're right up on top of it, so you're like in it. You're close to it psychologically, right? Where it's like this thing that's just hovering right in front of you, and you can see, you're seeing it all.
And probably functional in that way too, right?
Right.
Like you're meditating on the picture or
Right.
using it as like
Yeah.
an object of devotion.
Yeah. It's for like one
Yeah.
person to experience, right?
Right.
Or like a abstract expressionist painting, like many people can experience it at the same time. There's no way that you can. Like I remember I went to the Met and this guy was like hogging the little Christ picture that was like he just standing in front of it and I was like, I want to stand in front of it for a long time. Get out,
Hey, dude! You're hogging the Jesus.
You're hogging the Jesus.
Could you imagine like a little 4x6 Jackson Pollock?
Yeah. Yeah. He did some of the smaller works or his earlier works. They're not really tiny, but more spatially constrained.
Mm-hmm.
To answer your question, I don't think I can't think of like an epiphany sort of sense like that. I remember standing in front of a Joan Mitchell painting at the Art Institute of Chicago. I used to live there, and I would always go to that painting and just stand in front of it, and you can just, it's so living, it's so dynamic, right? Just like following how everything was, like I said, like figuring out how it's constructed and, piecing it together, but then also just kind of like taking in just the like raw image of it. And you can, like good work, you can stand in front of it for hours, and it's as entertaining as like a Hollywood blockbuster movie, probably more so, right? If you can like get into the space to, stand in front of painting in general, right? But that painting, the Joan Mitchell painting at the Art Institute, I don't even know what its title was or is, but it was so entertaining, just like, and it gave so much. It's like so rich and so dense that it can just continually like give and give and give and give. And I don't know. I whenever I go to a new city and new museum, usually like she's one of the first people that I seek out because they're just so vital. Everything's just like living and breathing. And so I guess I don't know.
No, it's a great one.
Yeah, and
I mean, for me, it was Pollock in a similar sort of way.
Yeah.
Before I saw his splatter paintings in person, I was just like, whatever.
Right.
And then when I saw them in person, I mean, it was the same thing. It was just like, whoa.
Right.
Like I actually saw it
Right.
for the first time.
Yeah.
And part of that was seeing it in person.
Yeah.
But also like just the reciprocity, I think, of the viewer with the piece. Like you have to play with that piece.
Right.
You have to play with those splatter paintings.
Yeah.
You have to get in there and like follow the lines and play around. And once I actually started doing that, it really changed the way that I looked at his work.
Right. Yeah. Seeing the real physical thing is so different too, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just so much more. There's so much more information. Anytime you photograph a painting, you're losing information,
Mm-hmm.
right? And just having that, it's a physical thing, and experiencing that physicality. It's just, it's nothing like it.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Right.
So good.
Anything you want to plug? Got a show coming up?
I have a show coming up. I have a show coming up at Ellsworth Gallery, April 12th opening, with my good friend Owen Mark Lorian. Be there or be a square.
Or view it after the fact? How long is it up for?
We haven't set a date for it to come down. I believe it's like a month and a half.
Cool.
So it'll be there. I've got it's a big space. I have many, many, many new paintings in process right now, getting ready for that. Thinking about football and gunfights.
Nice. Well, thanks so much for sitting down with me and doing
absolutely.
this. It was fun.
Thank you.
All right.
Cool.